The thunderous sound of hooves pounding against the dusty earth echoed through the canyon, as Zara Keller urged her horse faster, her heart racing as violently as the stallion beneath her. The distant shouts of the posse behind her only made her dig her heels deeper into the animal's sides. Her hands, still bearing traces of blood that wasn't her own, clutched the reins with white knuckles as she fled toward the setting sun of the Colorado Territory in the summer of 1876. "Come on, Midnight," she whispered desperately to her black stallion, the only thing she had managed to take when fleeing the scene of a murder she didn't commit. "Just a little further." The sound of gunfire cracked through the air, a bullet whizzing past her ear close enough that she could feel its deadly heat. Ducking lower against her horse's neck, Zara blinked away tears of fear and exhaustion. 3 days on the run had left her depleted, desperate, and terrified. The wanted posters that had appeared in every town she passed through bore her face, and the words "wanted," "dead or alive" in bold letters, along with the accusation of murder that made her stomach turn every time she thought about it. She hadn't killed Senator Williams. She'd found him, yes, slumped over his desk with a knife plunged into his back, but she hadn't put it there. As his secretary, she'd simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, her screams alerting others who immediately assumed the worst upon seeing her standing over the body, his blood on her hands from her futile attempt to help him. The terrain began to change as midnight carried her deeper into the foothills. The rocky landscape offered more cover, and Zara took advantage, steering her horse behind a large outcropping of boulders. She listened as the posse's hoofbeats grew fainter, suggesting they'd continued straight while she'd veered off the main trail. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, pressing her forehead against Midnight's sweaty neck. "Good boy," she whispered, patting him gently. "You saved me." As darkness fell, Zara guided Midnight carefully down a narrow trail that looked to lead toward a valley. In the distance, she could make out what appeared to be a small settlement lights twinkling against the encroaching night. Rico, Colorado. She'd heard of this mining town but had never visited. It was smaller than Denver by far, which might work to her advantage, or might mean that strangers were more easily noticed. Her stomach growled painfully, reminding her that she'd had nothing but a few berries and a drink from a stream since the previous day. She needed food, rest, and a safe place to hide. But where could a woman wanted for murder find sanctuary? The sound of movement nearby made Zara freeze. She pulled Midnight to a halt and held her breath, listening intently. It wasn't the posse, the sound was too subtle, the movement of a single horse and rider rather than a group. "Who's there?" called a deep voice, and Zara nearly jumped out of her skin. "I can see you against the skyline. State your business." Panic flooded her system. She could run, but Midnight was exhausted. She could fight, but she had nothing but a small knife tucked in her boot. Or she could surrender to whoever this was and hope they hadn't seen the wanted posters. "I'm just passing through," she called back, her voice shakier than she would have liked. "Heading to Rico." A match flared in the darkness, illuminating the face of a man as he lit a cigarette. In the brief flash of light, Zara caught a glimpse of a strong jawline. A cowboy hat pulled low over his eyes, and the glint of what might have been a badge on his chest. Her heart sank. A lawman. Her luck had run out. The man urged his horse forward, emerging from the shadows. As he drew closer, Zara could see him more clearly. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps in his late 20s, with broad shoulders and a face weathered by the sun and wind. And what she'd thought was a badge was actually just a silver concho on his vest. "Rico's not a good place for a woman alone at night," he said, his voice deep and even. "Especially one who looks like she's running from something." Zara stiffened. "I'm not running from anything." The man took a long drag from his cigarette, the ember glowing brightly in the darkness. "That blood on your sleeve says otherwise." Automatically, Zara glanced down at her once fine blouse, now filthy and indeed stained with the senator's dried blood. Fear clutched at her throat. "It's not what you think." "I'm not thinking anything yet, madam." He studied her for a moment longer, then flicked his cigarette to the ground, crushing it beneath his boot. "Name's Quinn Jacobson. I run cattle on the north side of the valley, and you are—" Zara hesitated. Should she lie? He'd surely find out her real name eventually if the wanted posters reached Rico, but something in his direct gaze made her reluctant to start with a falsehood. "Zara," she said finally. "Zara Keller." If he recognized the name, he gave no indication. Instead, he nodded toward the trail ahead. "Well, Miss Keller, as I said, Rico's no place for a woman alone after dark. Mining towns have a way of turning rough when the sun goes down. My ranch is about 2 miles from here. You're welcome to a meal and a place to rest for the night." Suspicion immediately flared within her. "Why would you offer that to a stranger?" Quinn Jacobson's mouth curved into a half-smile. "Let's just say I've been in situations where a helping hand would have been appreciated. Besides, your horse looks dead on its feet, and I don't make it a habit to leave women alone on the trail at night, stranger or not." Zara weighed her options. Continue to Rico and risk immediate capture, or accept this cowboy's offer and at least get a night's rest before moving on. It wasn't much of a choice. "Thank you," she said finally. "I accept." Quinn nodded, turning his horse. "Follow me then, and try to keep up." The Jacobson ranch was modest but well-maintained. A single-story cabin sat nestled against a hillside with a barn and corral nearby. As they approached, a dog began to bark, racing out to greet them. "Quiet, Rusty," Quinn commanded. And the dog immediately fell silent, though its tail continued to wag furiously as it circled their horses. Zara dismounted stiffly, her legs nearly buckling after so many hours in the saddle. Quinn was already on the ground, leading his horse toward the barn. "Bring your mount in here," he said. "We'll get them both settled for the night." Inside the barn, Quinn efficiently unsaddled both horses, brushing them down while Zara stood awkwardly to the side, unsure of what to do with herself. The normality of the situation, a man caring for his animals at the end of the day, seemed surreal after the chaos she'd been living through. "You know how to use a curry brush?" Quinn asked, breaking into her thoughts. "Yes," Zara replied, accepting the brush he held out. She began to work on Midnight's coat, the familiar motion somehow comforting. "Your horse is a fine animal," Quinn commented, measuring out grain for both mounts. "Thoroughbred, part. His dam was a quarter horse." Zara ran her hand along Midnight's sleek neck. "He was a gift from my father before he passed." Quinn nodded, seeming to understand the value of such a gift without needing further explanation. When the horses were settled, he led the way to the cabin, Rusty trotting at his heels. The interior was simple but comfortable, a main room with a stone fireplace, a wooden table with 4 chairs, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove, and 2 doors that Zara assumed led to bedrooms. It smelled of coffee and wood smoke, and despite herself, Zara felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Make yourself comfortable," Quinn said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "I'll get us something to eat." Zara sank into one of the chairs, suddenly overcome with exhaustion. The events of the past few days crashed down on her all at once, and she had to blink back tears of relief at simply being off the trail, out of immediate danger. Quinn moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, stoking the fire in the stove and setting a pot of beans to warm. He sliced bread and cheese, setting them on a plate in front of Zara along with a mug of strong coffee. "Eat," he encouraged. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days." "I haven't," Zara admitted, taking a grateful bite of the bread. It was fresh and surprisingly good. "Did you bake this?" "My neighbor, Mrs. Winslow, brings me bread twice a week. Says a bachelor can't be trusted to feed himself properly." There was a hint of amusement in his voice. Zara ate in silence for a moment, the simple food tasting better than anything she could remember. When Quinn set a bowl of beans in front of her, she thanked him earnestly. "So," Quinn said, taking a seat across from her with his own food, "want to tell me what you're running from?" Zara's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "What makes you think I'm running?" "Besides the blood, the exhausted horse, and the way you keep looking over your shoulder." Quinn raised an eyebrow. "I've seen my share of people on the run, Miss Keller. You have that look." Zara set down her spoon, her appetite suddenly diminished. "I should go. I've imposed enough already." "You haven't finished eating," Quinn pointed out calmly, "and it's dark. Where would you go?" "I don't want to bring trouble to your door. Trouble finds me regularly enough without any help." He took a drink of his coffee. "Look, I'm not asking for your life story. But if there's a posse or bounty hunters following you, I'd appreciate knowing what I might be riding into tomorrow." Zara stared at him. "Tomorrow, when I ride into town for supplies," he clarified. "Rico might be small, but news travels fast in these parts." Zara's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee. The warmth of the mug steadied her. "They think I killed someone, a senator. If Quinn was shocked, he didn't show it." "Did you?" "No," Zara said firmly, meeting his eyes. "I was his secretary. I found him. After. But I was there alone, and his blood was on my hands from trying to help him. No one believed me." Quinn studied her face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Why would they think a woman would kill a senator?" "There were rumors," Zara said, her cheeks heating despite herself. "Completely untrue rumors that the senator and I were involved. They said I killed him in a lover's quarrel." "Were you involved?" "No," Zara said emphatically. "Senator Williams was a married man 30 years my senior. I respected him as my employer, nothing more." Quinn nodded slowly. "So who did kill him?" "I don't know," Zara admitted. "He had many political enemies. The railroad bill he was sponsoring would have cost some very powerful men a lot of money. And instead of investigating these powerful men, they decided to pin it on his secretary," Quinn observed dryly. "Convenient." Zara blinked, surprised by his quick understanding. "Exactly. Finish your supper," Quinn said, returning to his own meal. "There's a spare room you can use tonight. It's small, but it's clean. Tomorrow we'll figure out what to do next." "We," Zara echoed. Quinn shrugged. "I'm not in the habit of sending innocent people to the gallows, Miss Keller. Now eat before your beans get cold." As Zara finished her meal, she studied Quinn Jacobson surreptitiously. He was handsome in a rugged way, with brown hair that curled slightly at the ends and eyes the color of the Colorado sky. His hands were calloused, his forearms muscled from hard work. Everything about him spoke of capability and strength, yet there was a gentleness in how he treated her and the animals that intrigued her. "Why are you helping me?" she asked finally. "You don't know me. I could be lying." Quinn set his empty bowl aside. "Could be. But I've always been a fair judge of character, and you don't strike me as a murderer." He paused, then added, "Besides, I know what it's like to be falsely accused." Before Zara could ask what he meant, Quinn stood, gathering their dishes. "Get some rest, Miss Keller. Morning comes early on a ranch." The spare room was indeed small, with just enough space for a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand. But the sheets were clean, and after washing her face and hands in the basin provided, Zara sank onto the mattress with a sigh of pure relief. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to truly rest, drifting into sleep with the strange comfort of knowing that Quinn Jacobson, A man she'd just met was somehow on her side. Morning arrived with the crow of a rooster and the smell of coffee drifting under her door. Zara woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was. The events of the previous days came rushing back, and she sat up with a gasp. A knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Keller, coffee's ready when you are," Quinn's voice called. "Thank you," she replied, running her fingers through her tangled hair. "I'll be right there." Zara splashed water on her face and did her best to make herself presentable, though her dress was beyond salvaging. She'd left Denver in such haste that she had nothing but the clothes on her back. When she emerged, Quinn was at the stove frying bacon. He glanced over his shoulder, nodding in greeting. "There's coffee on the table," he said, "and I've set out some things you might find useful." On the table beside a steaming mug was a stack of clothing, a pair of men's trousers, suspenders, a cotton shirt, and a bandana. "They'll be too big," Quinn acknowledged, "but they're clean, and they'll help you blend in better than that dress. I've also left some soap and a razor by the washing trough out back if you want to clean up after breakfast." Zara was touched by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, that's very kind," Quinn shrugged, setting a plate of bacon and eggs in front of her. "Eat up." "I need to check on a calf that was born yesterday, then I'll be riding into Rico. You should stay here." Zara frowned. "Is that safe? If there are wanted posters." "Safer than coming with me," Quinn pointed out. "I need to find out what they're saying about you and if there's a posse in the area. I'll bring back more supplies and we can make a better plan." The idea of being left alone made Zara nervous, but she understood the logic. "All right, but please be careful." Quinn's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Always am." After breakfast, Quinn showed her where everything was: the root cellar with preserved foods, the pump for fresh water, the woodpile for the stove. He introduced her properly to Rusty, the friendly brown and white dog who would stay behind with her. "He's good company," Quinn assured her, "and he'll bark if anyone approaches." When Quinn rode out, Zara took the opportunity to wash thoroughly in the trough behind the cabin, grateful for the privacy and the chance to be clean again. The men's clothing was indeed too large, but with the suspenders and by rolling up the sleeves and pant legs, she made them work. She even washed her hair, letting it dry in the warm morning sun as she explored the small ranch. It was a peaceful place, nestled in a valley with mountains rising on three sides. A stream ran nearby, providing water for the house and animals. The barn housed Quinn's horses, 3 besides the one he was riding, and a small herd of cattle grazed in a pasture beyond. It wasn't a large operation, but it was well maintained and clearly the work of a man who took pride in what he did. Zara found herself wondering about Quinn Jacobson. What had brought him to this remote valley? What did he mean about being falsely accused? And why was he so willing to help a stranger who brought nothing but potential trouble? By midday, Zara had swept the cabin, drawn fresh water, and was considering what to prepare for supper when Rusty's ears perked up. The dog trotted to the door, tail wagging, then suddenly froze, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Zara's heart leaped into her throat. Someone was coming, and it wasn't Quinn. She quickly scanned the cabin for a weapon, grabbing a shotgun mounted above the fireplace. She checked it quickly loaded, thankfully, and positioned herself to the side of the window where she could see out without being easily spotted. 2 riders were approaching, neither of them Quinn. They wore dusty trail clothes and had the hard look of men who lived by their guns. Bounty hunters, Zara guessed, her mouth going dry with fear. Rusty continued to growl, his hackles raised. "Easy, boy," Zara whispered, though her own pulse was racing. The men reined in their horses in front of the cabin, scanning the area. "Looks empty," one of them said. "Maybe the information was wrong." Nah, someone's here. Dog wouldn't be barking otherwise, the other replied. Let's check it out. Zara tightened her grip on the shotgun. She had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. She would have to stand her ground and hope the bounty hunters could be reasoned with or intimidated. The men dismounted, and one of them approached the door while the other moved toward the barn. Zara took a deep breath and positioned herself to the side of the door, shotgun raised. The knock, when it came, was surprisingly polite. Hello? Anyone home? Zara remained silent, hoping they might leave if they thought the place was empty despite the dog. The man knocked again, harder. We know someone's in there, we just want to talk. What do you want? Zara called, trying to make her voice sound deeper, more masculine. Looking for a woman, the man said. Murderess escaped from Denver, thought she might have passed this way. Haven't seen any women, Zara replied. Just me and my dog here. There was a pause, then the sound of a quiet conversation between the two men outside. Mind if we come in? The first man called. Been riding since dawn and could use some water. Sorry, Zara responded. Owner's not here and doesn't take kindly to strangers in his house. And who might the owner be? Quinn Jacobson. He'll be back any time now. Another pause. Jacobson, huh? I've heard that name. Used to ride with the Rangers in Texas, didn't he? Zara had no idea, but she seized on the information. That's right. And he still shoots like one. The mention of Quinn's apparent past seemed to give the men pause. There was more murmured conversation, and then the first man spoke again. Well, when Jacobson returns, you tell him Barton and McKee were looking for a woman named Zara Keller. She's wanted for murder in Denver. $500 reward, dead or alive. If he sees her, he should let the sheriff in Rico know. I'll tell him, Zara promised, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. She listened as the men mounted their horses and rode away, only lowering the shotgun when Rusty's growling stopped and the dog's tail began to wag again. Collapsing into a chair, Zara let out a shaky breath. She'd bought herself some time, but now she knew for certain there was a bounty on her head, and men were actively hunting her. Quinn returned late in the afternoon, his saddlebags full of supplies. One look at Zara's face told him something had happened. Bounty hunters, she explained, describing the encounter. Quinn's expression darkened. Barton and McKee, they're known around these parts. Not the worst of the breed, but dangerous enough. They mentioned you were a Texas Ranger, Zara said, watching his reaction. Something flickered in Quinn's eyes. Used to be. That was a long time ago. Is that where you were falsely accused of something? Quinn set down the saddlebags, avoiding her gaze. That's a story for another time. He began unpacking the supplies: flour, coffee, salt, ammunition, and, to Zara's surprise, a dress and women's boots. I thought you might need these, he explained when he saw her looking. Mrs. Winslow at the general store helped me pick something suitable. Said they belonged to her daughter, who's now living in St. Louis. Zara touched the simple calico dress with something like wonder. That's very thoughtful, but you shouldn't have spent your money on me. Consider it an investment in keeping you inconspicuous. Quinn continued unpacking. There are wanted posters in town, just as you feared. Your face is on them, though the likeness isn't very good. What are people saying? That you were Senator Williams' mistress and killed him in a fit of jealousy when he refused to leave his wife. Quinn's tone was matter of fact. The sheriff in Rico received a telegram from Denver asking him to be on the lookout, but he's not organizing any posses. Says he has enough to do keeping order in his own town without chasing after Denver's problems. Relief flooded through Zara. So I'm safe here. For a little while at least. As safe as you can be with bounty hunters roaming around, Quinn qualified. But yes, I think we have some time to figure out our next move. Our, Zara questioned again. Quinn looked at her directly then, his blue eyes serious. I believe you're innocent, Miss Keller. And I don't like seeing innocent people persecuted. So yes, our next move. Something warm unfurled in Zara's chest at his words. For the first time since fleeing Denver, she felt a flicker of hope. Now, Quinn said, breaking the moment, I believe you were about to tell me what really happened the day Senator Williams was killed. Over supper, Zara recounted the events in detail. How she'd arrived at the senator's office early that morning, as was her custom. How she'd found the door unlocked, which was unusual. How she'd called out but received no answer, so she'd entered, only to find Senator Williams slumped over his desk, a knife protruding from his back. I didn't think, she explained, pushing food around on her plate. I just rushed to him, checked for a pulse, and then pulled the knife out. Which ensured your fingerprints were on the murder weapon, Quinn observed, and his blood was on my hands and clothes, Zara confirmed. When his aide walked in moments later, it looked damning. What about the rumors of an affair? Zara sighed. There was no affair, but the senator was attentive, too attentive sometimes. I rebuffed him politely, and he never pressed the issue, but people noticed his interest. Gossip spreads quickly in political circles. So you had motive, opportunity, and were caught literally red-handed, Quinn summarized. No wonder they were quick to accuse you. But I didn't do it, Zara insisted, a hint of desperation in her voice. I believe you, Quinn assured her. The question is, who did, and how do we prove it? I've been thinking about that, Zara said. The senator was working on a railroad bill that would have regulated freight rates. It would have cost certain companies millions. The Blackstone Railroad Company in particular was vocally opposed. Blackstone, Quinn repeated thoughtfully. Owned by Theodore Blackstone, Zara nodded. You know of him. Every rancher in Colorado knows Blackstone. His railroad sets the rates that determine whether we make a profit or a loss when shipping cattle east. Quinn's expression was grim. He's not a man who takes opposition lightly. The senator received threats, Zara revealed. I saw them. Notes delivered to the office warning him to drop the bill or face consequences. Did you tell the authorities about these threats? I tried, Zara said bitterly. No one wanted to listen. It was easier to blame the secretary than investigate one of the most powerful men in the territory. Quinn was quiet for a moment, considering. Those notes could be evidence in your favor. Do you know what happened to them? They should still be in the senator's files in his office. I kept everything organized by date. So the evidence that could clear you is sitting in an office in Denver, Quinn mused. Not exactly accessible at the moment. No, Zara agreed, her brief flare of hope fading. And even if we could get to them, who would believe me now? I'm a fugitive. My word means nothing. Your word might not, Quinn said slowly, but what if we had evidence directly linking Blackstone or one of his men to the murder? Something more substantial than threatening notes. Zara looked at him skeptically. Like what? I don't know yet, Quinn admitted. But every murderer makes mistakes. If Blackstone arranged this killing, there's a trail somewhere. We just need to find it. We can't exactly go to Denver and start investigating, Zara pointed out. No, but Denver isn't the only place Blackstone operates. Quinn leaned forward, his eyes intent. He has business interests all through the territory, including right here in Rico. Zara's eyes widened. Here. There's a silver mine just outside of town. Blackstone bought it last year. He visits occasionally to check on his investment. Quinn's expression turned thoughtful. In fact, Mrs. Winslow mentioned that he's expected to arrive by the end of the week for the town's Founders' Day celebration. The man who might have ordered my death is coming here. Zara felt a chill run through her. It could be an opportunity, Quinn suggested. If we're careful. Careful. Quinn, I'm wanted for murder. If anyone recognizes me, no one will, he interrupted. Not with your hair pinned up differently, wearing proper women's clothing. People see what they expect to see, and no one would expect Senator Williams' murderer to be attending a small-town celebration. Zara stared at him, torn between thinking he was brilliant and thinking he was insane. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we do a little investigating of our own, Quinn said. Blackstone won't be traveling alone. He'll have his personal secretary, probably his head of security. They might know something or have documents that could help us. You want to spy on Theodore Blackstone, Zara stated flatly. I want to clear your name, Quinn corrected. And if that means observing one of the most powerful men in Colorado to find evidence he had a senator killed, then yes, that's what I'm suggesting. Zara should have been terrified by the proposition. It was dangerous, potentially suicidal, but instead she felt a strange surge of determination. For days, she'd been running, reacting. The idea of taking action, of fighting back instead of just fleeing, was oddly appealing. All right, she said finally. What's our plan? Quinn smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face and made Zara's heart skip a beat. First, we need to make you presentable for town. No one's going to believe you're my cousin visiting from back east if you're wearing my old trousers. Your cousin, Zara echoed. We need a story to explain your presence, Quinn pointed out. Distant cousin visiting from Pennsylvania seems as good as any. Zara couldn't help but laugh, the sound surprising even herself after days of fear and tension. Quinn Jacobson, I think you might be as crazy as I am. Probably crazier, he agreed with a wink. Now try on that dress and see if it needs any alterations. Founder's Day is just 3 days away. The next morning, Zara woke to the smell of coffee and biscuits. She dressed in the calico dress Quinn had brought her, pleased to find it fit reasonably well. When she emerged from her room, she found Quinn at the stove, his back to her. Good morning, she said. Quinn turned, and for a moment he simply stared. Zara self-consciously smoothed the dress. Does it look all right? It looks right, Quinn said finally. Better than my old clothes, anyway. Was that a hint of color in his cheeks? Zara couldn't be sure in the morning light, but the way he quickly turned back to the stove made her wonder. Over breakfast, they discussed their plan in more detail. Founder's Day in Rico was apparently a significant event, with a parade, dancing, and a dinner at the town's hotel that would be attended by all of the local notables, including Blackstone when he arrived. As a local rancher, I'm invited to the dinner, Quinn explained. Not that I usually attend, but this year I'll make an exception, and I'll bring my cousin from Pennsylvania who's eager to see the frontier. And once we're there, what exactly do we hope to accomplish? Zara asked. Information, Quinn said simply. Blackstone will have papers with him, business documents, correspondence. His secretary will handle most of it. If we can get access to those papers, we might find something linking him to the senator's murder. Just walk up and ask to see his private correspondence. Zara's tone was skeptical. No, Quinn admitted. We'll need to be more creative than that. The plan they devised over the next 2 days was indeed creative, if somewhat reckless. Zara would pose as Quinn's cousin, recently arrived from Pennsylvania. At the Founder's Day dinner, she would deliberately spill wine on Blackstone's secretary, creating a distraction. While Quinn helped clean up the mess, he would pocket any key papers the secretary might have on him. Later, they would find a way to access Blackstone's room at the hotel to search for more evidence. It was a plan with many potential points of failure, but it was the best they could come up with given their limited resources and time. As the day of the celebration approached, Zara grew increasingly nervous, not just about the plan itself, but about appearing in public where she might be recognized. Quinn assured her that with her hair styled differently and in proper women's clothing, she would look quite different from the wanted posters, but the fear lingered. "What if something goes wrong?" she asked the night before, as they sat by the fire after supper. "Something probably will," Quinn said honestly. "But we'll adapt. That's what survival on the frontier is all about, adapting to whatever comes your way." His calm confidence was reassuring, and Zara found herself studying him as he stoked the fire. In just a few days, Quinn Jacobson had become her protector, her ally, and, she realized with a start, someone she was beginning to care for deeply. The thought was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked suddenly. "And don't say it's just because you believe I'm innocent." Plenty of innocent people suffer injustice every day without Quinn Jacobson riding to their rescue. Quinn was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, reflective. "When I was with the Texas Rangers, I was assigned to investigate cattle rustling along the border. I tracked the rustlers to a small ranch owned by a Mexican family. All the evidence pointed to them. The cattle were in their corral. The brands had been altered. I arrested the father and his 2 sons. He paused, his expression pained. They protested their innocence, said the real rustlers had left the cattle there to frame them. But I had my evidence and I was sure I was right. They were convicted and sent to prison. What happened?" Zara asked gently when he fell silent. "6 months later, we caught the actual rustling gang," Quinn said, his voice hollow. "They confessed to framing the Mexican family to throw us off their trail. By then, the father had died in prison from pneumonia. The sons were released, but their ranch had been seized, their livelihood destroyed." Zara's heart ached for him. "It wasn't your fault. You were doing your job." "I was so certain of their guilt that I didn't look deeper," Quinn said, shaking his head. "I didn't question the evidence that seemed so clear. Because of that, an innocent man died and his sons lost everything." "Is that why you left the Rangers?" Quinn nodded. "I couldn't be part of a system that allowed that to happen. So I came north, bought this ranch, and tried to build a life where I wouldn't have to make those kinds of judgments anymore." His eyes met hers across the firelight. "And then you showed up, with the law at your heels for a crime you say you didn't commit." Understanding dawned. "You see me as a chance to make amends." "Maybe partly," Quinn acknowledged. "But it's more than that. I believe you, Zara, not just because I want to, but because your story makes sense. And I'm not going to stand by and watch another innocent person suffer if there's anything I can do to prevent it." The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep within Zara. Without thinking, she reached across and placed her hand over his. "Thank you." Their eyes held for a long moment, and Zara felt something shift between them, a deepening of trust, a recognition of shared purpose, and perhaps something more that neither of them was ready to name. Quinn cleared his throat, gently withdrawing his hand. "We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." As Zara lay in bed that night, she found herself thinking not of the dangers that awaited them in Rico the next day, but of the man sleeping across the hall, a man with a past that had shaped him into someone who would risk everything to right a wrong. And for the first time since fleeing Denver, Zara allowed herself to think that perhaps, just perhaps, things might turn out all right after all. Founder's Day dawned bright and clear, the type of perfect Colorado summer day that seemed designed for celebration. Quinn and Zara set out for Rico early, both dressed in their finest clothes. Quinn wore a clean black suit that transformed him from rugged rancher to distinguished gentleman, while Zara wore the calico dress with her hair pinned up in a modest style that Quinn's neighbor Mrs. Winslow had helped her achieve the previous day. "Remember," Quinn said as they rode toward town. "You're Zara Keller from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, my mother's sister's daughter, visiting the West for the first time. And you're showing me the excitement of frontier life by taking me to a small town celebration." Zara completed the fabrication with a nervous smile. "Exactly. Just stay close to me, Smile, and try to look like you're enjoying yourself despite your cousin's rough manners." That drew a genuine laugh from Zara. "I don't think your manners are rough at all, Quinn. In fact, you're surprisingly genteel for a cowboy." "My mother would be pleased to hear that," Quinn said with a hint of a smile. "She tried her best to civilize me before I ran off to join the Rangers." Rico was transformed for the celebration. Bunting and flags decorated the main street, and a band played lively tunes in the town square. People had come from all the surrounding homesteads and ranches, dressed in their Sunday best, creating a festive atmosphere that under other circumstances Zara would have thoroughly enjoyed. Quinn led her through the crowd, stopping occasionally to introduce her to neighbors and townspeople. Zara smiled and chatted, playing her part as the Eastern cousin while constantly scanning faces for signs of recognition or suspicion. But no one seemed to connect her with the woman on the wanted posters, and gradually she began to relax slightly. "Jacobson." A booming voice called, and Quinn turned to greet the town sheriff, a burly man with an impressive mustache. "Didn't expect to see you here. You usually avoid these gatherings like they're carrying the plague." "Couldn't disappoint my cousin," Quinn replied smoothly, placing a hand on Zara's back. "Sheriff Miller, allow me to introduce Miss Zara Keller from Pennsylvania." Zara's heart nearly stopped at the mention of the sheriff, but she maintained her smile and offered her hand. "A pleasure, Sheriff. Quinn has told me so much about Rico and its fine citizens." Sheriff Miller took her hand, his eyes twinkling. "Has he now? Well, don't believe everything this rascal tells you, Miss Keller. He's been known to stretch the truth when it suits him." "Only about the size of the fish I catch," Quinn replied good-naturedly. The sheriff laughed. "Well, enjoy the celebration. The dinner at the hotel starts at 6. I hear Theodore Blackstone himself will be attending, so it should be quite an event." "We'll be there," Quinn assured him, and with a tip of his hat the sheriff moved on. Zara released a shaky breath. "He didn't recognize me." "Told you," Quinn murmured. "People see what they expect to see. No one expects a wanted murderess to be attending a town celebration on the arm of a respectable rancher." They spent the afternoon wandering through the festivities, watching children's races and listening to speeches by local dignitaries. Zara found herself genuinely enjoying the simple pleasures of the celebration, despite the undercurrent of tension that never quite left her. Several times, she caught Quinn watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, something warm and appreciative that made her cheeks flush. As the afternoon waned, they made their way to the hotel where the formal dinner was to be held. The Rico Hotel was the finest building in town, a 3-story structure with actual glass windows and a proper dining room that had been decorated lavishly for the occasion. Quinn and Zara were among the first to arrive, which was part of their plan. They needed to observe the room's layout and identify Blackstone and his entourage when they arrived. They didn't have long to wait. Theodore Blackstone made an entrance calculated to impress, flanked by 2 men who could only be his personal secretary and head of security. Blackstone himself was a tall, imposing figure with silver hair and the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power. His secretary was a nervous-looking man with spectacles who clutched a leather portfolio to his chest, while the security man was built like a bull, his eyes constantly scanning the room for threats. "That's our target," Quinn murmured, nodding toward the secretary. "The portfolio." Zara nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. The plan seemed far more daunting now that their marks were actually present. The dinner began with more speeches, followed by a surprisingly elaborate meal served by the hotel staff. Zara picked at her food, too nervous to eat, while Quinn maintained a calm demeanor, occasionally engaging in conversation with those seated near them. Throughout the meal, they both kept a careful eye on Blackstone's party, seated at the head table. When the dessert plates had been cleared and coffee was being served, Quinn gave Zara a subtle nod. It was time. Zara rose, ostensibly to visit the ladies' retiring room, but instead made her way toward the head table where Blackstone's secretary was now standing alone, organizing papers in his portfolio. As she approached, she deliberately caught her heel in the carpet and stumbled forward, the glass of wine she carried splashing directly onto the secretary and his precious documents. "Oh," she exclaimed loudly, feigning horror. "I'm so terribly sorry, how clumsy of me." The secretary let out a yelp of dismay, looking down at his ruined shirt and the wine seeping into his papers. Quinn was at their side in an instant. "What happened? Here, let me help you with that." He pulled out a handkerchief and began dabbing at the secretary's shirt, creating further confusion while slipping several folded documents from the portfolio into his sleeve with practiced ease. "It's ruined," the secretary wailed, looking at the stained papers. "Mr. Blackstone will understand that accidents happen," Quinn interrupted smoothly. "Perhaps if you take these to your room and dry them out immediately, the damage won't be too severe." The secretary blinked, then nodded frantically. Yes, you're right. Excuse me." He hurried away, clutching the dripping portfolio. "I'm so sorry for the disruption," Zara apologized to the onlookers who had gathered. "I'm afraid I'm not accustomed to such fine carpets in Pennsylvania." The incident was soon forgotten as the band began to play, signaling the start of the dancing portion of the evening. Quinn led Zara back to their table, his expression neutral but his eyes gleaming with success. "Did you get anything?" she whispered as they sat. "3 letters," he confirmed quietly. "We'll look at them later. But first, we need to find out which room is Blackstone's. That's where the real evidence will be." As the dancing commenced, Quinn and Zara joined in, using the opportunity to move about the room while maintaining their cover as innocent celebrants. During a waltz, Quinn guided them near where Blackstone was speaking with the mayor. "The arrangements for tomorrow's mine inspection are all set," the mayor was saying. "I've reserved our finest suite for you, of course, room 301 with the view of the mountains." "Excellent," Blackstone replied. "I'll need to review some documents tonight, so please ensure I'm not disturbed after the celebration." Quinn squeezed Zara's hand gently as they waltzed away. "Room 301, he murmured, "and he'll be working late." The rest of the evening passed in a blur for Zara. They danced, they chatted with townspeople, they played their parts perfectly while watching Blackstone's every move. When the celebration finally began to wind down, they made their excuses and left. But instead of heading back to the ranch, they slipped around to the back of the hotel. "Are we really going to break into his room?" Zara whispered as Quinn examined a service entrance. "Not break in, exactly," Quinn corrected, producing a small leather case from his pocket. "During my ranger days, I learned a few skills that weren't exactly in the official training manual." With deft movements, he picked the lock on the service door and they slipped inside, finding themselves in a back hallway of the hotel. "The staff staircase should be this way," Quinn murmured, leading her down the hall. They moved silently through the hotel, avoiding the few staff members still working at this late hour. When they reached the 3rd floor, Quinn paused, listening carefully before leading Zara down the corridor toward room 301. "What if he's already there?" Zara whispered. "Then we'll have to try another approach," Quinn replied. "But I'm betting he's still downstairs, enjoying his status as the most important man in the room." He was right. Room 301 was dark under the door, and when Quinn pressed his ear against it, he heard nothing from within. Once again, he produced his lock picks, working quickly and efficiently until the lock clicked open. "Stay here and keep watch," he instructed Zara. "If anyone comes, knock twice on the door and then walk away. I'll handle it." Before she could protest, Quinn slipped inside the room, leaving Zara alone in the hallway, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure someone would hear it. The minutes crawled by as Zara stood watch, every distant sound making her jump. What was taking Quinn so long? What if Blackstone returned and found him? What if they were both caught and arrested? Just as her anxiety threatened to overwhelm her, the door opened and Quinn emerged, his expression grim but triumphant. In his hand was a small leather-bound book. "Got it," he whispered. "Let's go." They made their way back down the service stairs and out the way they had come, not speaking until they were well away from the hotel, heading back toward Quinn's ranch under the cover of darkness. "What did you find?" Zara finally asked. "Blackstone's personal ledger," Quinn replied. "And I think it contains exactly what we need." Back at the ranch, they spread their stolen documents on the kitchen table. The 3 letters Quinn had taken from the secretary were informative, but not damning business correspondence about railroad matters that mentioned Senator Williams' opposition, but didn't suggest any criminal intent. The ledger, however, was a different matter entirely. "Look at this," Quinn said, pointing to an entry dated 3 days before the senator's murder. "Payment to J. Reeves, $1,000 listed under special projects." "Who is J. Reeves?" Zara asked, leaning close to examine the neat handwriting. "James Reeves is a known hired gun," Quinn explained. "I encountered him during my ranger days. He specializes in making problems disappear permanently." Zara's breath caught. "You think Blackstone hired him to kill the senator?" "I'm sure of it," Quinn said grimly. "Look at the entry 2 days after the murder, Jr. Final payment, problem resolved, $1,500. And here the same day. Campaign contribution to District Attorney Harrison, $5,000. The district attorney who so quickly accepted my guilt without investigation," Zara said bitterly. "Exactly." Quinn turned the page, revealing more damning entries. Blackstone was covering all his bases. He paid Reeves to eliminate Williams, then paid off the district attorney to ensure a quick resolution with you as the convenient scapegoat. "So we have proof," Zara said, hope rising within her. "But what do we do with it?" "We can't exactly walk into the sheriff's office with stolen documents." Quinn was quiet for a moment, considering. "No, but we could ensure these documents find their way to someone who would use them properly, a federal marshal, perhaps, or a newspaper editor in Denver who isn't in Blackstone's pocket." "Blackstone will know they were stolen," Zara pointed out. "He'll guess it was us." "By the time he does, we'll be long gone," Quinn said. "I have a friend in Wyoming who could hide you while I take these documents to Denver to a journalist I trust." "You do that for me?" Zara asked softly. "Leave your ranch, risk everything?" Quinn looked at her then, his blue eyes intense in the lamplight. "I would. In fact, I've been thinking that maybe it's time for a change anyway. Wyoming has good ranch land, I hear." The implication of his words hung in the air between them. He wasn't just offering to help clear her name, he was offering a future together. Before Zara could respond, a sound from outside caught their attention, the approach of horses, multiple riders by the sound of it. Quinn moved swiftly to the window, peering out into the darkness. Riders. At least 4 of them. Zara's heart sank. Blackstone, he couldn't have discovered the theft so quickly. No, Quinn said, his voice tight. It's Barton and McKee, and they've brought friends. They must have been watching the ranch. Fear flooded through Zara. What do we do? Quinn was already moving, gathering the documents and stuffing them into a saddlebag. We run. There's a back trail through the mountains. If we can reach it before they surround the house, we might have a chance. Quinn Jacobson, a voice called from outside. We know you're harboring Zara Keller. Bring her out and maybe we won't burn your ranch to the ground. Quinn's expression hardened. Get your things. Quickly. As Zara grabbed her few possessions, Quinn loaded his rifle and pistol, his movements efficient and practiced. When she returned to the main room, he was extinguishing the lamps, plunging the cabin into darkness. Stay close to me, he whispered. We're going out the back way through the root cellar. There's a tunnel that leads to the stream. I had it dug when I built the place. Old ranger habit, always have an escape route. What about Rusty? Zara asked, looking at the dog who stood alert by Quinn's side. He knows what to do, Quinn assured her, patting the dog's head. Rusty, guard. The dog gave a soft woof of acknowledgement and took up position by the front door as Quinn led Zara to the kitchen and lifted a trapdoor hidden beneath a rug. Below was a small cellar, and at the far end, a narrow tunnel. Go, Quinn urged, helping Zara down. I'll be right behind you. The tunnel was cramped and earthy smelling, forcing them to crouch as they moved through it. Zara could hear shouting from above, and then a louder sound, a rifle shot, followed by Rusty's fierce barking. They're getting impatient, Quinn muttered from behind her. Keep moving. After what seemed an eternity, the tunnel opened out onto the bank of the stream that ran behind Quinn's property. 2 horses were tethered there, already saddled and laden with supplies. You planned for this, Zara realized as Quinn helped her mount. I planned for every contingency, he replied, swinging up onto his own horse. It's how I've stayed alive this long. They set off up the stream, riding in the water to mask their tracks. Behind them, Zara could see the glow of firelight. The bounty hunters had set fire to the cabin. You're home, she said, anguished. Quinn, I'm so sorry. It's just wood and nails, he said, though his voice held a note of regret. What matters is that we got out with the evidence and each other. They rode hard through the night, following trails that Zara would never have found on her own. Quinn clearly knew these mountains intimately, guiding them unerringly even in the darkness. When dawn broke, they were high in the Rockies, looking down on Rico from a ridge that seemed to touch the sky. We should rest the horses, Quinn said, dismounting in a small clearing sheltered by pines. And ourselves. Zara nearly fell from her saddle, exhaustion overtaking her now that the immediate danger had passed. Quinn caught her, his strong hand steadying her. Easy, he murmured. You're safe now. For the moment, Zara corrected, looking back the way they had come. But they'll be tracking us. They'll try, Quinn agreed. But I didn't spend years as a ranger without learning how to disappear when needed. We've left a false trail that should lead them north toward Utah while we head east to Denver. Denver, Zara's eyes widened. That's the last place I should go. It's also the last place they'll expect you to go, Quinn pointed out. And it's where we need to take this evidence. My friend at the Rocky Mountain News will know what to do with it. And then what? Zara asked, suddenly uncertain. Everything was happening so fast, her life changing direction with dizzying speed. Quinn's expression softened as he looked at her. Then we clear your name, and after that? Well, that depends on you. On me. On what you want, Zara. Quinn's voice was low, earnest. Do you want to go back to your life in Denver? Continue as a secretary? Or would you consider other possibilities? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Zara looked at this man who had risked everything for her, his home, his safety, his future, and felt something unfurl in her chest, something warm and certain. I'm beginning to think other possibilities might be exactly what I want, she said softly. Quinn's smile was like the sunrise breaking over the mountains, warm and full of promise. He stepped closer, his hand coming up to gently touch her cheek. I was hoping you might say that. When his lips met hers, Zara felt as though her entire world shifted on its axis. The kiss was gentle at first, a question rather than a demand, but as she responded, it deepened into something more powerful, a promise, a beginning. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. I know this isn't the most conventional start to whatever this is between us, but I want you to know, Zara Keller, that I believe in you, and I believe in us. Zara laughed softly, a sound of joy despite their circumstances. Quinn Jacobson, there is nothing conventional about finding a man like you while fleeing a murder charge with bounty hunters on my trail, but I wouldn't change a moment of it. As they made camp for a brief rest before continuing their journey, Zara felt a peace settle over her despite the dangers that still pursued them. For the first time since finding Senator Williams' body, she allowed herself to believe that there might be a future for her, after all, a future that included the remarkable man who now sat beside her, planning their next move with the same calm confidence with which he faced everything life threw at him. Their journey to Denver was arduous, taking them through rugged mountain terrain to avoid main roads and settlements where bounty hunters might be watching. They traveled mostly by night, resting during the day in hidden camps that Quinn seemed to find instinctively. Throughout the journey, their bond deepened, conversations ranging from childhood memories to hopes for the future, punctuated by moments of tender affection that made the hardships of the trail seem insignificant. On the fifth day, they reached the outskirts of Denver. Quinn had procured new clothing for them both from a friendly trapper's cabin along the way, and with her hair dyed darker using walnut husks and wearing a modest dress, unlike anything she'd worn as a secretary, Zara was virtually unrecognizable. "We'll find rooms in different boarding houses," Quinn explained as they prepared to enter the city. "I'll contact my friend at the newspaper while you stay out of sight. Once he has the evidence, things should move quickly." "And if they don't?" Zara couldn't help but ask. "Then we have enough supplies to reach Wyoming," Quinn said simply. "Either way, we face it together." They parted with a lingering kiss, Quinn heading toward the newspaper offices, while Zara made her way to a small boarding house on the edge of town, where respectable but down-on-their-luck women could find affordable lodging. For 2 agonizing days, Zara waited in her small room, venturing out only for meals in the boarding house dining room. On the morning of the 3rd day, she opened her door to find a newspaper that had been slipped underneath. The headline made her gasp. "Railroad magnate implicated in senator's murder. Secretary cleared of all charges." The article detailed how documents from an anonymous source had revealed Theodore Blackstone's involvement in Senator Williams' death, including payments to a known assassin and bribes to the district attorney. The hired killer, James Reeves, had been apprehended trying to flee the territory and had confessed, implicating Blackstone to save himself from the gallows. The district attorney had resigned in disgrace, and a federal marshal had issued an arrest warrant for Blackstone himself. Most importantly, the article explicitly stated that Zara Keller, initially accused of the crime, had been completely exonerated. Zara sank onto the bed, tears of relief flowing freely down her cheeks. It was over. She was free. A knock at her door made her jump. When she opened it, Quinn stood there, his face alight with triumph. "Have you seen?" he began, but got no further as Zara threw herself into his arms. "Yes," she laughed through her tears. "Yes, I've seen it. It worked. I can't believe it worked." Quinn held her tightly, his own relief evident in the way his body relaxed against hers. Believe it, Blackstone was arrested this morning at his Denver mansion. The evidence was overwhelming once the authorities actually looked at it. What happens now? Zara asked, drawing back to look at him. Now, Quinn said, taking her hands in his, we have choices. Real choices, not just desperate options. You could reclaim your life here in Denver. Your position with the senator's office is gone, of course, but with your name cleared, you could find other employment. Zara studied his face, noting the careful neutrality of his expression. Or, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Or you could come with me to Wyoming. I've been in touch with my friend there. There's a ranch for sale not far from his, good land with a creek running through it. We could start fresh, build something together. Wyoming, Zara repeated, testing the word. It sounds very far away. It is, Quinn acknowledged. Far from Denver, far from the politics and corruption that nearly cost you your life. But it's beautiful country, Zara. Wide open spaces, mountains, clear streams. Room to breathe, to live honestly. Room for us, she said softly. Quinn's eyes were earnest as they held hers. Yes, room for us, if that's what you want. Zara thought about Denver, about her small apartment and her job as a secretary. It had been a good life, a respectable life, but not one that had ever truly fulfilled her. And now, standing before her was a man who had risked everything to save her, who looked at her with such hope and promise in his eyes. Wyoming sounds perfect, she said, her decision made. When do we leave? The joy that spread across Quinn's face was all the confirmation she needed that she had made the right choice. He pulled her close, his kiss a seal on their future together. As soon as you're ready, he murmured against her lips. Though there's one thing I'd like to do before we go. What's that? Zara asked, curious. Quinn reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, a simple band with a modest diamond that caught the morning light. I know it's fast, he said, suddenly looking uncharacteristically uncertain. And I'd understand if you wanted to wait. But these past weeks have shown me what really matters in life, Zara, and what matters to me is you. Zara's breath caught as Quinn dropped to one knee before her, the ring held between his fingers. Zara Keller, I love you. Will you marry me and build a life with me in Wyoming? Tears welled in Zara's eyes again, but this time they were tears of joy. Yes, Quinn Jacobson. Yes, I will marry you. They were married the next day by a justice of the peace, with Quinn's newspaper friend as their witness. It was a simple ceremony, but as they exchanged vows, Zara felt that no elaborate wedding could have been more meaningful. 2 days later, they left Denver behind, traveling north toward Wyoming and their new life together. The journey was long but filled with anticipation rather than fear. Their conversations now centered on plans for their ranch, the house they would build, the family they hoped to create. When they finally reached the property Quinn had described, Zara understood immediately why he had spoken of it with such enthusiasm. The land stretched before them, a verdant valley nestled between mountains, with a clear creek winding through meadows that would be perfect for cattle. The existing cabin was small but well built, with room to expand as their needs grew. What do you think? Quinn asked as they dismounted in front of what would be their new home. Zara turned in a slow circle, taking in the beauty that surrounded them. I think it's perfect, she said, her heart full. Quinn came to stand beside her, his arms slipping around her waist. Welcome home, Mrs. Jacobson. The years that followed were not without challenges. Building a ranch from the ground up required hard work and perseverance. There were harsh winters, difficult calving seasons, and the normal struggles of frontier life. But through it all, Quinn and Zara faced each challenge together, their bond growing stronger with each obstacle overcome. They expanded the cabin into a proper house, adding rooms as their family grew. Their first child, a son they named Thomas, arrived just over a year after they settled on the ranch. He was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Elizabeth, and eventually by another son, James. Quinn proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, teaching their children the skills they would need to thrive in the West. Zara, who had once thought her life would be confined to an office in Denver, found unexpected fulfillment in ranch life. She learned to ride as well as any cowhand, helped with the cattle, and kept the ranch books with the same efficiency she had once applied to a senator's correspondence. As the children grew, so did the ranch's prosperity. Quinn's knowledge of cattle and Zara's head for business made them a formidable team. They added acreage, increased their herd, and eventually built one of the most successful operations in the territory. Their ranch became known not just for its fine cattle but for its hospitality. Travelers passing through knew they could count on a warm meal and a place to rest at the Jacobson Ranch. Quinn and Zara never forgot what it meant to be in need of help, and they paid forward the kindness that had brought them together. On the 10th anniversary of their arrival in Wyoming, Quinn surprised Zara with a special gift, a silver locket containing miniature portraits of their 3 children. 10 years, Zara marveled as they sat on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday that I was running for my life in Colorado. And sometimes it feels like I've loved you forever, Quinn replied, taking her hand in his. I thank God every day that you stumbled onto my ranch, even though it cost you your home. Zara teased, though the memory of his burning cabin still brought a pang of regret. I gained a far better home, Quinn said, his eyes warm as they met hers. And a family I never dared hope for. I'd say that was more than a fair trade. Zara leaned her head against his shoulder, contentment washing over her. Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't stolen Blackstone's ledger, if we hadn't been able to clear my name? Sometimes, Quinn admitted. But I believe we would have found our way here eventually. Some things are just meant to be, Zara. As the sun sank below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land they had worked so hard to build together, Zara knew with absolute certainty that Quinn was right. Their path had been unconventional, a desperate flight from false accusations, a cowboy's decision to hide a stranger, the dangerous quest for truth that had followed, but it had led them exactly where they were meant to be. In each other's arms, they had found not just safety, but a love that had transformed them both, a partnership that had withstood every trial, and a future brighter than either could have imagined on that fateful night when a woman running from the law had crossed paths with a cowboy with the courage to believe in her innocence. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Zara offered a silent prayer of gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought them together, for the truth that had set her free, and for the love that had given her a home she had never dared dream of finding.